Okay, in this video we're checking out the RunCam Racer Nano. This is another nano-sized FPV camera, but this one is a little bit different than what we've seen before in the nano-size. I guess the most popular one has been the Caddx EOS series, the original EOS 1 and the EOS 2. It's this size here. It's 14 millimeters by 14 millimeters, and the EOS 2 has the little screw holes, which the RunCam also has for mounting. And it also has this little adapter piece here. You could use this to convert the nano size to a micro size, which will work for more frames. But I think we're going to be seeing more frames that are going to be actually fitting the nano sized. I think it was one of the HobbyMate micros that I reviewed recently uses a frame that fits the Caddx EOS. So if you don't like that camera, then this camera might suit you better. I would say that this camera is pretty similar to the way the Predator looks, and also if you look at the way the menuing system works and the way you can change the settings, it does also look very similar to the Predator. I do know that a lot of you guys do not like the image that the stock settings gives for this camera, so in the later part of the video, when I'm flying, just before I fly the 1.8 millimeter lens version, I am going through some settings. I'm trying to find some better settings that look good to me, and at least through my Fat Shark goggles. So you may or may not like the way that looks, and of course DVR footage doesn't necessarily equate with what it looks like in the goggles, so keep that in mind, that it's not exactly what it looks like in the goggles, but it should give you an idea that there should be some improvement if you happen to like those settings. But what I would suggest is playing around those settings yourself to get the image that you're looking for, because there's obviously a lot of things you can change, from brightness, contrast, sharpness, saturation, color hue. All those things make a difference. Mostly, I think the reason why people don't like the image on this here is that it's probably, in my opinion, too oversaturated, and perhaps maybe a little bit too much contrast, and also way too sharp. There's this feature in the menu that you can turn on and off called Sharp View. I found that it looks better to me with that off. So yeah, I mean, when you see the flight footage for the stock 2.1 millimeter lens, that's going to be the default settings with Sharp View on, and then the 1.8 millimeter lens flight is going to be with my settings with Sharp View off. So you guys can decide which one you think is better. But let me just show you the two different lens versions. One here on the left is the 1.8 millimeter lens version, and the one on the right is the 2.1 millimeter lens version. That's the difference in the lens. Everything else is the same about the camera, so basically the only difference is the field of view created by the lens. They're saying it's about 160 degree field of view for the 1.8 millimeter lens and 145 degree field of view for the 2.1 millimeter lens. Yeah, it does make a difference. I would say you get a little bit more vertical and horizontal field of view. Obviously, the 145 versus 160 versus the 2.1, so you get a little bit more horizontal and vertical field of view with the 1.8 millimeter lens, but you do get a little bit more distortion as well, especially on the edges, so keep that in mind. So those of you guys who really like super wide field of views, that you probably want to go for the 1.8 versus the 2.1. Alright, so now in terms of the weight here, this is just without the adapter, and this is the 1.8 coming in at 4.4 grams, and then this is the 2.1 with the adapter, is coming in at 4.8 grams, and then pop the adapter off. This is the 2.1 without the adapter. It's coming in at 4.23. So it looks like the 1.8 is just a hair heavier. Maybe it's due to more glass elements in the lens, perhaps. Not sure, but that would be the only difference, is the lens. So that must be where the extra weight is coming from. Now, one of the things you can see here that's different between the EOS series from Caddx and this one is that this has a little joystick connector. It's actually this one here. This is actually for the video. It's this one here. It does not come with the RunCam joystick, so you do have to either have that yourself, or you have to acquire that if you want to change the settings. the EOS doesn't have this ability to change settings. But so you may not like the image that this produces, but you do have the ability to change the settings to something a little bit more to your liking if you don't happen to like the stock settings. As I said, the joystick isn't available, but you can also change some of the settings via these gestures, where you basically power it up and then you put your hand in front of the lens for I think about 3 seconds, and then if you move it away, then you can change the individual settings. So if I believe you leave it in front at the beginning, it'll let you change either PAL or NTSC, and then you can also change the aspect ratio, 4:3 or 16:9, by putting your hand in front of it and then also moving the hand back and forth to swap between different settings. And also there is going to be some presets, so that obviously the default is the personal, which you can change yourself, and then there's going to be light tracks and darkness, I think, is a couple of the presets you can swap between. So those are the things you can quickly change by just using the gestures when you first power up the camera. So yeah, actually I'll just put a little video up here of what it looks like. I think it was a demo of it up on the RunCam website. It works similar to some other, I think it was another camera that did that, was FXT camera that did that. It's basically you just move your hand in front of it when you power it on, and then you get a little menu on top, and then when you take it away, you can then go through the individual settings by then flashing your hand and covering up the lens very quickly, and then if you want to go to the next setting. So if you want to say start with the aspect ratio, and then you go to the next one, which is NTC or PAL, you just basically leave your hand in front of it for, I believe it's more than 3 seconds. That's how you would cycle through the different settings one by one. Okay, so one last thing you should note is that the power voltage range on this is somewhat limited. It's like 4.5 to 5.5 volts. So yeah, if you put in full LiPo voltage, you'll fry the camera, so be careful about that. Unlike most other FPV cameras that can take a wide voltage range, say out to 4S or something like that, this is not the case. So you want to be around 5 volts, and you can see it's clearly labeled 5 volts there, so be careful of that. Other than that, that's about it. I'm going to show you the stock footage, basically from the 2.1mm lens first. Basically, it's going to be a flight at the park that I normally fly at. You can see what the default settings look like, and then I am going to be going through some settings changes on the 1.8, and then I'll fly that with the setting changes also with sharp view off. So that'll be the second flight, and you'll see what this is like, that field of view at the same park. I believe that's on a different day, so there might be some slightly different lighting conditions. I think it's the same part of the day. I think one day might have had a few clouds or something like that. So just keeping that in mind, just a little bit of lighting changes, but you get an idea what how these cameras perform in that same park. And if you want to see how other cameras perform in that same park compared to these, I have a whole list of videos in the FPV Camera playlist. I'll put that playlist link down in the description, and you can take a look at footage from, I've reviewed dozens of cameras, and you can see what other popular cameras I have flown over there, and you can do some side-by-side footage by just opening up another browser window and finding the same part of the park that I'm flying at, and then you compare what the image looks like on that camera versus this one. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of this camera down in the comment section below. What your opinion of this camera is. I think it pretty much looks like the Predator, and just I think that the range of the settings you can change this camera is also pretty similar in terms of dynamic range and everything like that. I think the resolution is a little bit lower though than the Predator. The Predator seems a little bit higher resolution than this one, but they don't have a nano version of this the Predator yet. I believe that is coming out pretty soon. So yeah, if you're wondering about that, I should have one of those fairly soon, and you should get some footage of that one as well sometime down the road. So stay tuned for that video, and here is the flight footage for you.